Good evening, everyone. You're very welcome to this evening's Women in Dark Skies. And my name is Georgia Macmillan. I'm the Mayo Dark Sky Park Development Officer. And I will, in a few moments, introduce our special guest for this evening, Teddie Hwang, who is sitting here almost beside me on the screen, but virtually anyway. And so we'll just give a couple of minutes because we've got quite a few people joining us, and we'll let everybody in. Just as a reminder, while we are doing a little bit of housekeeping, we are recording first of all, and I will just actually switch on. One thing I haven't done is do our live broadcasting to YouTube. Actually, I don't think it's going to let me, but never mind, that's okay. So we are recording, and we will be uploading this to YouTube afterwards. So folks, if you can just keep your microphones off for the duration of the talk with Teddie, and we'll see how many people we have at the end for questions and answers. And if it's nice and informal, then we'll invite you to ask questions verbally. And if not, we do have the chat box, and Jed Dowling is beside me and is looking at the chat box, so he'll be keeping an eye on the questions that come in. So let's just admit a few more people. So once again, welcome. You're very welcome to Women in Dark Skies, and thank you for joining us on this evening, which is also part of Irish Astronomy Week, the first of its kind Irish Astronomy Week. So we're delighted for that. So I think I will just start moving to our Menti, which you may have seen in the chat box. We have a menti.com facility, if you like. I'm just going to share my screen. So for those that didn't see it, if you could either switch your phone or even use the barcode, the QR code there, and pop in the number 85241398. And we ask our guests if they'd like to pose a question to the audience. And tonight, Teddie has put a question for you. What are some sensations you experienced whilst being under a beautiful night sky, which I think is a lovely question. So if you can access that and you can pop in your answer, that would be nice. And we've got it on screen share. And whilst we're looking at that, I will take the opportunity now to introduce Teddie. So Teddie Hwang, I first met Teddie, I had the pleasure of meeting her for the first time last year at the Galway Early Music Festival. And that's really part of what we're celebrating tonight, as tonight is the European Early Music Day amongst historical musical performers. So Teddie is, among many things, she is a historical flautist and a photographer. She's based in Mainz, Germany. And ever since being introduced to astrophotography, she's been fascinated and inspired by the night sky. So she's also an advocate of the International Dark Sky Association. She holds a bachelor's degree in music and Germanic studies from the Indiana University, and she received her master's degree from the Royal Conservatory in The Hague. So with that, I will hand you over to Teddie. And Teddie, if you let me know if you want me to switch off the Menti, so I'll hide my video. But thank you very much for joining us, and welcome, Teddie.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll keep the Menti cloud going because I think it's always fun to see how the cloud develops. So thank you so much, and really a heartfelt thank you to Georgia for asking me to present here today. I'll be honest to say that I'm just at the very beginning of my journey in the dark sky movement, but I hope the things that I'll be touching on today are not just about getting people to know me or what I do, but I want to encourage others, whether musicians, photographers, artists, and creatives from all different disciplines who might be considering a similar path, to show how the night sky unites us all, and also more specifically, how the arts can contribute engagingly to night sky awareness and appreciation. So with that, that's my question. And we see some of the sensations that people experience when being under a night sky: tranquility, peacefulness, awe, sense of being very small. Yes, I totally relate to that. intrigue, fascination, light, vastness. So yeah, it obviously goes without saying that the night sky sparks such a fascination and wonder. And we feel sensations which can hardly be comparable to any other experience. And I will be talking about my professional activities which have been inspired by the night sky. And people can keep doing the Menti as we go along, but I will start my screen share now, and then we can always come back to it at the end. It'd be interesting to see what other responses people have. So I will start now with my screen share. Great. Can everyone see that all right?
Perfect, Teddie, thanks.
Great. Okay. So just first of all, very briefly about myself, Georgia gave a great introduction. What does it mean that I'm a historical flutist? So here's a photo of some of my flutes. You may notice that they look different than what you might recognize as a flute, or here's a picture of a traditional Irish flute. So I play on copies of flutes which were used during the time period of the composition. So for example, if playing Baroque music with works from Bach, Telemann, or Vivaldi, I play a Baroque flute, and actually I have one right here with me today. It looks like this, very simple, and you see obviously without keys except just for one key, which is totally different from the modern flute. And on a classical flute, I would play works such as from Mozart, Haydn, and so forth. And as a historical performer, we also use historical playing methods as appropriate for the specific style. And this aspect connects beautifully with the night sky, which I'll go into later. As far as getting interested in the night sky, my first dark sky experience was back in 2020, right before the worldwide pandemic shutdown. My husband and I were in Death Valley, and their Dark Sky Festival happened to be taking place at that time. We went to some of the events, and including a presentation on astrophotography by fellow IDA member Jeremy Evans. And I'll never forget when we went out at night, when real darkness settled in, and I saw for the first time the most amazing night sky I've ever seen. And you know, I didn't realize that was possible. And I think we as human beings and so day beings, we just kind of shut down once it's dark. But at that moment, for me, it was like the magic was about to begin. And of course, once I saw what burst of light I captured on my camera through long exposure, the whole experience opened a new world for me. And after that, I started to discover this whole community of dark sky activists, and it was really inspiring to see how extensive the movement is, what it covers, from environmentalism to education, philanthropy, empowering disadvantaged communities, empowering women, and of course the arts. And while astrophotography is a very direct and powerful connection to the night sky, I felt like, well, it doesn't have to be limited to that. And besides either composing music or songs that have to do with the night sky or astronomy, people might think of the orchestral suite, The Planets by Gustav Holst. What interests me is how I can use concepts from the night sky experience to incorporate into my various professional activities. So I first like to talk about how I use astrophotography and the night sky to explain important concepts in music pedagogy. Allow me to take you a quick tour into the world of music. We'll start with the obvious connection, which is the experience of light and dark. So all of you know, and I was hoping actually somebody would mention this, but when we first go out at night in a really dark night, then eyes need time to get adjusted. And in fact, it can feel kind of uncomfortable at first if you're not expecting that, because it's as if the darkness is closing in on you. But once you get over that, it's as if the darkness opens up again and then light unfolds around us. The eyes can see much more than at the beginning, and it's really a wonderful experience. So I use this example to educate musicians on how it's important to stay curious about the music we're playing, to literally discover the light in passages that may not seem obvious at first. Here you see an image which I often use in my workshops to illustrate this concept of how many details can exist in a composition, both in the light and in the shadow areas. In music, we also talk about creating light and shadow with one sound. And this is one of the most essential aesthetic values in music, especially in the tradition that I work in, which is Western classical music. This means that we should always play with a varied expression. So there's a constant change in dynamics, articulation, and quality of sound. This shows artistic maturity and an understanding for the musical language. And using the visual analogy of light and shadow is an effective way to communicate this concept. Because without such variation, music would be very boring and meaningless, and both for the listener as well as the performer. The technique of long exposure used in night photography is also parallel to the idea of learning a piece of music over time. And just like how long exposure allows us to see beyond the physical limitations of our vision, musical interpretation is about gaining understanding beyond the visible notes. You'll be familiar with this maybe already, which some of you who practice astrophotography, the longer you expose in photography, the more you'll be able to capture in an image. So here we have the same image with various exposure values, and each time you see that the sky, you see more stars, and the Milky Way actually becomes present. And for deep sky objects like galaxies or nebulae, one needs hours, days, or even months, depending on what the object is. An incredible amount of data and work goes into that final image. And here I draw the analogy to music, where the notes we see on the page isn't music itself. And notation is only a rough indication of how the music should basically go. And to fully understand a piece of music takes time and practice. So I tell students to practice long exposure in music. So here you see an example from, this is a movement from the famous German composer Johann Sebastian Bach, who actually has his birthday today on March 21st, and therefore we have Early Music Day. This is a composition of his written for solo flute. If I were to play the music as it appears on the page, it would sound very boring. And allow me to demonstrate that. Yeah, so you see, I hope you can hear that, obviously the notes seem to look the same, and there are no indications of loud or soft, or how one should phrase. There are notes that maybe are shorter or longer, and everything just kind of looks black. But if I were to write in everything that I would actually do in a performance, it would look like this. So you see many more markings indicating phrasing, loud and softness, whether some notes are longer or shorter, and all these elements will give life to the music. And of course, Bach didn't mean that his music should be played boringly, but it is up to the performer to know how to interpret accordingly. And we need to take time and dig deep into understanding Bach's intentions and then applying that knowledge into actual performance. And to fully understand and appreciate music beyond the printed black notes is like being able to see air glow with the help of long exposure, and that we're able to experience something magical beyond certain natural boundaries or limitations. So in which case, the Bach should more or less sound like this. So I hope you could hear that how the concepts of light and dark, variations, and long exposure transform the visible notes into something much greater. And I use that fascination we all have for the night sky to inspire musicians to stay curious about music, to appreciate the wonder of music, and striving for artistic development in a wholesome way. And I don't think I would have come with this way of explanation if I didn't experience dark skies myself. From music students to amateurs to professionals, I work with a variety of target groups to help musicians take their artistry to the next level. And I'm happy to say that the resonance has been positive, and especially as music institutions are increasingly interested in interdisciplinary learning. I've been very fortunate to have been recognized by my alma mater, Indiana University, for example, where I gave a lecture to music students using dark sky concepts to gain insight into historical performance. And in June, I'm looking forward to presenting at the International Baroque Conference at the Conservatory of Music in Geneva. And as well as in August, I'll be at the National Flute Association's convention in Phoenix, Arizona. And there, I'll be collaborating with another fellow IDA member, Bradley Peterson. In the same presentation, he'll be talking about light pollution in Arizona, followed by a short slideshow featuring his images of the Arizona night sky with my flute performance. So that's going to be combining various aspects of music and dark sky themes in one package. And I'm happy to say, I'm really excited to say that the National Flute Association's convention is a huge event. It attracts flutists literally from worldwide. And so we're really looking forward to the opportunity to introduce the topic of dark sky awareness to the public. And ever since those nights in Death Valley, the dark sky actually then became a new source of inspiration for projects and collaborations. I kept in touch with Jeremy after our meeting at the Dark Sky Festival in Death Valley, and we seemed to get along really well, so we decided to put together a short time-lapse film featuring his footage of the comet Neowise with my flute playing. And I like to show that. It just takes about 1 minute. And here we go. So that's my little shout out to fellow friend Jeremy. And once I saw that, excuse me, once I saw that, I realized what potential this mixed medium had. Excuse me. And how it would be so great to keep going in this direction. And as hard as the pandemic years were, they also provide an opportunity for me to experiment further with music and photography. So I started to produce my own films, and in 2021, my efforts resulted in a commission from the Boston-based ensemble Les Bostonnades. Not all of the images in this film are dark sky friendly, but the idea was to bring the viewer into this kind of night mood, and we wanted to deliver a message of solace during that difficult time. And the film was released as a Valentine's Day special, and I'll let you take a moment to enjoy that, and it's about 3 minutes. So I will now do a video share, since it's a longer film. Just give me 1 second here. Let me come back to my presentation now. Yes, so that was, I should mention, featuring Akiko Sato on the harpsichord, director of the ensemble Les Bostonnades. sorry. So I never thought I'd be the cover girl of a major festival, but there you have it. This was from May last year, where I performed at the Galway Early Music Festival, as George has mentioned, with my colleague, Ireland-based harpsichordist Johann Sebastian Bach. And the program was entitled Discovering Light, and I wove my night sky experiences into my narration and performance of the music, along with my nightscape imagery photos projected. This is also where I met Georgia in person, and we did a joint presentation the next day called Music, Photography, and the Dark Sky Movement. And I think such a multifaceted presentation was very unique for the audience. And I remember at least one audience member who was both at my concert and at our talk said that he felt inspired to look into dark sky activism because he was really touched from the music, from the images, and from our presentation. And that is what I hope to do, is that people becoming compelled to act because they feel emotionally moved to do so. And I think the arts and we artists have the potential and ability to contribute to that. And of course, the night sky is a deep source for faith and spiritual growth. So I started to think about how I could work with that aspect. And since in Germany, a lot of music takes place in churches, I thought about how I could bring my ideas into those communities. So in December, I put together a Christmas program for a church where I also knew the pastor well. My husband, who is a hobby astronomer, did an introduction to astronomy, showing his own images, and also offered some possible explanations for the Christmas star. And I also showed some of my night photography and played music and talked about my experiences with the night. All along, the pastor moderated and would phrase her impressions in terms of faith in a truly open, non-denominational way. I then took this idea to another church community, and coming up on September 15th, I'll be coordinating an Earth Night event there. So Earth Night is a German initiative for light pollution awareness. And so on the 15th of September, all participating communities, organizations should turn off their lights at the latest at 10 o'clock and bring about night dark sky awareness. So on that day, we'll have a speaker from the Observatory Wetterau to talk about light pollution in the area, together with the pastor of the church, myself, and another musician. And I now like to share the content of this program to give you some ideas on what kind of themes can be incorporated into such an event. And obviously, this is something I worked out with the pastor, so the themes are in the Christian tradition, but one should, of course, adapt accordingly to the situation. So we open with the meaning of the sky and the universe in terms of the Christian faith, or whatever faith, again, depending on the community you'd be addressing. And obviously, it also helps if you're working with a religious leader or speaker who's good at communicating in as an open way as possible, which will then follow by the causes of light pollution and the current situation in the region, the effects of light pollution on the environment, on us humans, and with that, we're highlighting the interconnectivity of all beings, which then leads to the idea of the destruction of God's creation, the idea of connection of all beings and advocating environmental justice. And there will be music interluding between sections, and music provides time for reflection and kind of summarizing the various parts. And at the same time, we're presenting both music and the night sky as our cultural heritage, and another way of also another way just to highlight our fascination with the untangible. So whether it's musicians and arts organizations presenting to new audiences, churches wanting to reach out to outside of their congregation or getting an environmental message across. I'm hoping that this shows that how everybody can benefit from creating that connectivity between various sectors of the community. And I think especially nowadays, some people may feel a sense of resistance towards environmental topics because it's such a hot topic. And so I think the arts has the capability to invite people towards that first step, stirring people's curiosity and getting the conversation going. And the Under One Sky motto is certainly one of the most powerful messages that dark sky activism carries. And we have a great potential in expanding on that. Which is why I suggested a while ago to Georgia that we should have our talk on Early Music Day today. The European Association for Early Music set this day on the birthday of the composer Johann Sebastian Bach, obviously a very important composer for us who specialize in Baroque music. So this day is about honoring a musical heritage which is both looking back and looking forward. That we're not just playing old music, as they say here in German, but we're staying relevant to current society. And by combining my music with the night sky and the dark sky movement has been personally a great journey for me so far, as I end up partnering with people and organizations who I'd otherwise never come in contact. And it's exciting for me to be able to reach out in this way. And obviously, I'm aware that only policy changes can make a difference, and these are all just basically one drop in the ocean, but perhaps my contribution in this way can nevertheless help facilitate those changes somehow. And the dark sky gave me a fresh initiative to feel like being part of a bigger picture. And it's not just about promoting early music or promoting any discipline or topic, but seeing everything as on the path to something else. That switch in mindset has been truly rewarding for me, and I especially want to share this message with everyone today. So, well, I've now spoken for long enough, and if you've been following on social media, you might have read that I'll be premiering a new film today. My films are a hybrid between still photography and movement. So the movement in the music influences movement between the still photos, which means that the transitions between images are very important, and it's not just about the images itself. Which is actually also, again, a reflection on that concept of the importance of the path as opposed to just focusing on the goal. You'll see footage from the dark sky parks here in Germany, the Rhön, West Havelland, and also some moonlit skies from the Dolomites. And it took me a couple of years to get the footage that I was envisioning for this music. Here you see my lonely camera working hard through the night while I snoozed indoors. This was the morning scene as I went to pick up my camera. And this kind of film for me is not only promotional in various ways, but as mentioned earlier, I also use this for teaching purposes. And night sky imagery with music is certainly very evocative and a great way to incorporate the visual with the oral. So you'll be hearing a piece for solo flute by the French composer Michel Blavet. For the early music musicians out there, it is the Gigue en Rondo in E minor. And also a short warning that this won't be a rendition which you generally hear. It's very much a personal interpretation of mine. And my concept with this film is seeing the light through murky times and trusting the light behind the fog. So once again, I will now do a video share. And the film is about 3 minutes. So I hope you enjoyed that. Let me go back to my slide here. And that's it. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope this has given you an impression of how the night sky has played an influential role in some of my professional activities, and also how we can expand on our message under one sky, which truly has deep and beautiful implications. This concludes my presentation, and I'm looking forward to hearing from all of you now. Thank you very much. I will stop my share.
Teddie, thank you so much. That was awesome, and the true. Somebody just put that in the chat box there as well, but it really was. Thank you. It's so different and so magical. Really loved it. So I'm going to have a quick look in the box. There was a question there. I don't know if you saw it just coming in at the end. Lovely question actually from Andrew McGrady, asking, do you know what I might do actually, Teddie, before we ask the questions here? Shall I take the spotlight off you so you're not sitting there lonely, and it might make people more comfortable to open up the floor if they would like. And if folks, if you do want to, if you're happy with your cameras on, that's fine. But just a reminder that we are recording, and folks, yeah, please, I would love to hear some questions because I'm bowled over by that. But I'll just read out Andrew's question here, which he said he's reminded of the music of the spheres and superstring theory, which conceptualizes everything in the cosmos as vibrating strings. My question is the language of music with respect to the sky, a dialogue or monologue? And to what extent do we listen to music of the cosmos as well as articulating our sense of mystery through music? What a lovely question. So,
wow.
Think about that one.
That's a deep question. I'll have to reread and kind of process in my head a bit. Language, music, respect to the night sky is a dialogue or more.
And while you're pondering there, I'll just remind everyone about the Mentimeter that we have, because there's some lovely points coming in there. You mentioned before the sense of people feeling very small under a night sky, and nostalgia for childhood I see there, which is a lovely one. I'll share that towards the end.
Sure. Maybe I'd like to ask Andrew, would you care to elaborate on your question?
Yes.
I don't know, Teddie, if you can hear me, and thank you, that was beautiful, and I think everybody has appreciated it. Do you know what I mean? It strikes me that there are different languages through which we articulate our understandings, and there is, of course, scientific language, which is extremely valuable. It's abstract, it's conceptual, and so on, right? But what you reminded me of today is, of course, the language of music. Do you know? And I mean, it is interesting, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? That, you know, the ancients had this concept of the music of the spheres and the different planets creating different notes and so on. And I mean, the latest cosmological theory, the superstring theory again, is at one level going back to the whole notion that everything, all matter, all energy, all elements, absolutely everything, you know, there may be variations on vibrating strings. Do you know what I mean? So, I mean, my question really is, you know, in your experience as an artist, inspired and in dialogue with dark skies, to what extent, you know, are you listening to, let's just say, the music of the spheres, as well as articulating your response to the mystery that surrounds you through music? So it's about dialogue or monologue.
Yeah, so I guess, first of all, I don't think about this concept of music of the spheres. I think, actually, to be honest, I'm not quite familiar with that, but also, based on what I know of, I'm approaching music just really at a very personal level, and sometimes it's just it's very hard for me to maybe even explain, and whether in words or and so the visual element for me is a kind of a way, it's like another way to explain that and to express that. And sometimes, yeah, for me it's more than just vibrations, and sometimes they're so sometimes they are visual, so maybe whether they're abstract shapes or a scenery, a landscape, perhaps, but other times, yeah, it's almost, I can't really put a finger on it at all, and it's just a feeling that I have, and maybe that's also the essence of music, and for those moments that you really don't find any other medium to substitute or to interpret and to interpret. And so, and that's, I think, also for me sometimes the difficulty in teaching, for example, because maybe, you know, you want your student or whoever you're coaching to get to a certain place, but first of all, you don't want to put too much influence on yourself on the person, but also sparking some kind of inspiration or planting a seed somehow. And I think, for example, in that case, you know, incorporating night sky imagery is a great way to create that space and to kind of initiate something, but not too much that it's too concrete, like, you know, kind of very old-fashioned way of teaching, if you would, saying this is that, but rather, oh, you know, well, this is the space in which this music can happen. So yeah, I don't really relate to the music of the spheres, and it's a very personal connection that I have.
Thank you, Teddie. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks you too, Andrew. I think what's coming through, Teddie, is people don't so much have questions because it was just so beautiful, and I find it quite hard myself to have a question for you because, but it is appreciation that's coming through. I mean, I'll save the chat for you later if we don't have time to read them. But for me, it's kind of a connection that you've established so well through an unusual medium. We're always talking about dark skies and how it, you know, it connects with the community, or it connects with ecology. And we do talk about music in the sense that, you know, look how many starry songs there are around, but not in the sense that you've demonstrated tonight, where it's transportive almost. So I think that's probably why we're all a bit on the quiet side tonight for once. So.
Yeah, and this was, as I said in the beginning, that you know, people know their compositions, or we as music performers, we play music, again, connecting to the music of spheres. So composers who composed music based on those principles in the like Renaissance times, and I think that and that's great, obviously, you know, but I'm more interested in taking concepts and applying those to whatever music it can be, or, you know, I'm curious to see what kind of music I can apply those to, and not just about playing this music.
It's
so it's working, yeah, it's working with the concepts and not necessarily about the actual thing. Yeah, if that makes sense.
I think I get you. We have a question on cameras now, to be
okay.
I suppose not on a moving slightly. So David is asking, can you or somebody else suggest affordable cameras for astrophotography? And he has a Nikon D70. I don't know if we have now. We do have an astrophotography session later in the week, David, if you're in Newport, but Teddie, I'm sure can.
Oh, are you looking to upgrade, or are you wondering whether it's possible to work with that? I'm a Nikon user as well.
I think he's looking to upgrade. He's got an old photo, but feel free, David, if you want to elaborate.
Okay, great presentation, by the way.
Thank you.
I'm coming to you from Newfoundland on the far east coast of Canada.
Oh, right, nice.
Yeah.
So hi, David. Welcome.
Yes, good to see you again, Georgia. We're in a pretty non-populated place out here, and when the sky is clear, it's great for night sky viewing. I've dabbled in night sky photography, but the camera I've got is about 14, 15 years old, and I don't know the physics of what's going on inside, but I do get some burn on the edges of my pictures, and the clarity is not there. So I'm looking to upgrade, but I don't want to break the bank. Is there something around the $1,000 price range where we can get some half decent night shots?
Well, you know, for the longest time, I actually just, to be honest, did an upgrade myself. So I worked with the longest time with my D700. And
Okay.
that still is, I think, you know, for depending on what you want to do, of course, that's always the question. But I really feel that camera is a great bang for the buck.
Okay.
And if you're, unless you decide you want to go into mirrorless, which obviously is a whole category, but you can now get, because everyone's going for mirrorless, you can get now secondhand options at a good price. And you know, people who generally buy these things, they also, my experience has been, they also take care of it. So you know, with a bit of careful shopping around, that you'd be able to get a good price with 700. And I think, you know, if you feel like you just want to start, but you don't want to invest too much, you know, I was for a long time, like I said, fine with my 700, and just quite. Last summer I bought the 850, which, you know, photographers might laugh, oh, that's already also old-fashioned, and you know, so it's the last, or seems like the last of the DSLR options from Nikon, and that is certainly a powerhouse. And if I don't, you know, check out how much those run in used, if you like, or yeah, they still sell them new as well, but that's obviously going to be more than the 700. But yeah, so that's just, the 700 will give you the option of a full format, so which is great. You just want to capture as much as you can on your sensor.
Great, thanks both.
Thank you.
Thanks, Teddie.
Good luck.
Derval Dunford has her hand up there, so Derval has a question for you, I think, Teddie.
Thanks, Georgia. Thanks, Teddie. I just wanted to ask if those pieces that you played, the videos are available on YouTube.
Yes, so except for the premiere, the last one that I showed, that's not on YouTube yet because I wanted to save it for you all tonight. The other ones are available on YouTube, on my YouTube channel. So you could, and there are some, as well as other photography films that I do. So yeah, and I'll be uploading the latest one then soon.
What we might do, folks, is send a follow-up to this. I don't have that URL to hand right now, so I can send a follow-up to everyone that's entered the call tonight, and give that link, and anything else, Teddie, that you want to share with the group here. So folks, with just there's a couple of questions coming in. There's a lovely one just asking there about Katrina Lee says, Teddie, do you imagine what those living in the early music era would have seen in their own night skies all those years ago, and perhaps might have inspired them also, which I think is lovely. Nice question.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's hard for us to imagine and what was that like, and also the fact that you know, people didn't have recordings, and to experience music was again, also a magical experience, just like the night sky. And we've lost that connection to that wonder, whether it's the night sky or the music, because everything is so so easily available now. Except for the dark sky, we actually have to go somewhere to be able to experience that. But yes, I do believe that with that connection to the night sky and darkness, that had a certain, definitely, influence on their artistic output. It's not something that you could prove, perhaps, and it also doesn't mean that that if a piece is not titled somehow connected to the night sky, then it doesn't count somehow. But I think the overall inspiration was definitely there for any music.
No, I think you're right, and that leads us nicely to the next comment and question from Francesco, who's asked Teddie, as a player, beside the fascinating concepts and their application to the music interpretation, have you actually tried to play physically in such an enchanted environment, and what difference does it make?
Oh, you mean outside?
I presume
the night sky, under the night sky?
I think that's what it means.
Yeah, well, so yeah, that's an interesting question. So the Baroque flute, or the flutes that I play on, they're not really quite meant to be performed outside. You can do it, of course, but they're just, it's very sensitive to the elements. And I've had organizers who come up to me, people who wanted to, like when they did, somebody had organized an opening for a dark sky place, and they asked if I would be available to play, and that would have been, at 3,000 meters in the mountains in Austria, and we tried to come up with some sort of compromise option, and finally it didn't really come through, and that's fine. And so yeah, it's just things like moisture, and that is not great for the instrument, and also because playing outside, the instrument also sounds a lot softer, if you would, than their modern counterparts. So it does really need a space, an acoustical space, to help you project. And so it functions very differently from a modern instrument. I think in an outdoor situation, it won't have that same kind of awe and beauty compared to an indoor location.
And I think having heard you and picking the right location is so important, where you get those acoustics in an old church or a place that's perhaps related to the era that you are, the type of music you're playing. It's just made for it, and the magic comes alive so much more. Okay, well, Teddie, I think we seem to be out of questions, but I would throw the floor open. If anyone does want to just take their mic off and ask a question, feel free. We have a couple more minutes. But personally, Teddie, that was absolutely gorgeous. And just one of the things that you said there about, looking, you're not looking backwards, we're looking forwards, and combining that, making this so relevant to society today, even though it's early music. Really, really thought-provoking. Thank you for that, my point of view. And we have, somebody has their hand up now. Who is it? I see a little. Maria, would you like to ask a question?
Hello, it's actually, my name's Jonathan. This is my daughter's tablet.
Okay,
No, it's just, thank you so much, Teddie. That was amazing. It reminded me of years ago of an album by a musician called Neil Ardley, and it was called The Harmony of the Spheres. And basically what he did was to take the rotation, if you tie something on a piece of string and you swing it around, you produce a tone. Well, his concept was the planets are turning round. So he actually sat down and worked out what the tone would be for each planet, turned it into a chord, and then wrote music on it. And it's actually very strange because he was a jazz musician, so I was expecting something very weird, but there's one piece there where he says he combined the whole range of the planets, and it's a very interesting concept there. That was one way of him obviously being inspired by that. I just wanted to know if anyone actually had heard of this, or yourself, Teddie, of this particular album.
Well, not that particular album, but it is. There are composers out there who use that, certain, these properties, and then translating that into sound somehow.
And would you actually, do you have a way of writing? Would you write to that, or have you a way of composition yourself? That's what I mean. Sorry.
So I don't consider myself a composer, so I don't actually compose music, but I do improvisations, for example, so kind of more short-scale, spontaneous improvisations.
The feel of what you're seeing.
Exactly.
Great.
So I admire composers who are able to do that. Sometimes, every time, actually, when I read an explanation about that kind of composition, I have to read it over many times, because it's highly complex. How they transfer that scientific data and put that into sound waves, and then interpreting that and making it work in a composition. So I think, because of course it's not enough just to, create some sounds, but to also make it meaningful. And so that's definitely.
But the same way when you're doing an impro, it's a spontaneous reaction to what you're seeing. So, but a composer would have to have the time to sit there and think about it. So what you're doing, I suppose, in the sense, is a lot more difficult, because you're having to just bring it out straight away, if you know what I mean.
Well, it has its, there are advantages and disadvantages, if you would, So the advantage is that it also is so superfluous, or it just, you have music for one moment, and then it vanishes, and a composition is something that sits, and so it's just a different way of musical outpour, if you would.
Well, listen, thank you so much for this evening. It really opened up a lot of ideas in my mind anyway, so much obliged to you.
I'm very happy to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that's a nice way to finish. Thank you, Jonathan, for the question, and Teddie, thank you very much again for a beautiful, beautiful evening. It's very surprising, even though I kind of knew what to expect, but not in this way. So everyone, thanks for joining us. It's another Women in Dark Skies. We will move through the week. We have Irish Astronomy Week, as you all know. So we are moving to Clonbur tomorrow night in Galway, Thursday back in Newport, and Friday in Letterkenny for our Dark Sky Walk. So lots still happening. Do check out Irish Astronomy Week online. I think it's .ie or .com if it's not, as one or the other. And you'll see a full program all over the country. So wherever you are, you'll find something for everyone at Irish Astronomy Week. And our next Women in Dark Skies, don't forget, is on the 22nd of May. And we will have a speaker called Jana Jakucina, and she's going to talk to us about light pollution and legislation. She's a lawyer and an environmentalist, and another expert speaker, and moving completely something completely different. So we do have a varied course of program. So for tonight, may I thank my co-host Jed Dowling, who's been sitting in the background here and answering all the chat posts. So thanks to Jed. Thank you to you. And lastly, once again, Teddie, thank you so much. And we will speak soon. and good night, folks.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.